Ngozi, I think you should be more careful. I just saw your husband with another woman in the same market.
Wait. So he really brought her to the same church compound?
Yes, exactly. I swear I nearly dropped my baskets.
Instead, Ngozi calmly walked toward them. The smile on Obinna's face vanished instantly.
Take him. I return him to you with my blessing.
Nobody in that market knew it yet, but Ngozi had already been 3 steps ahead for 2 years. And by the end of this story, you'll realize exactly when. Before we go further, if you love stories where the quiet ones turn out to be the smartest people in the room, hit subscribe and tap like now, because the twist at the end of this one is going to make you want to watch it again from the very beginning. Ngozi already knew something Chioma was about to discover the hard way. The man she thought she had won was actually a debt nobody wanted to inherit. If you asked anyone in Ogwaluland who had the most respected marriage, most people would give the same answer. Ngozi and Obinna. They looked like a couple blessed by the ancestors themselves. Whenever Obinna walked through the market square, people straightened their backs to greet him. The men called him chief long before any title was given. The women whispered that he was the kind of husband every daughter should pray for. Even the pastor mentioned him during sermons. That man built his house with his own 2 hands, he would say, pointing at Obinna's family pew. Obinna never corrected anyone. He drank the praise like palm wine, slow and satisfied. He was broad-shouldered, well-spoken, and always seemed to know exactly what to say to make a room admire him. To outsiders, he looked like a man who had built something. But inside his home, the truth wore a different face entirely. Every morning before the cock finished crowing, Ngozi was already moving. She swept the compound, lit the fire, prepared akara for sale before sunrise. Then she opened her fabric stall in the market, the one she had built from nothing, thread by thread, customer by customer, over 11 years. By afternoon, she was supervising the 2 seamstresses she employed. By evening, she was reviewing orders for the following week. From cock crow to moonrise, Ngozi walked like the ground depended on her. Meanwhile, her husband remained mostly still. Obinna woke up whenever his body decided to wake up. He would eat what Ngozi left covered on the stove, then walk to the palm wine joint near the junction, where he held court among men who called him Sir, for reasons nobody could quite explain. Whenever someone asked what he did for a living, his answer changed depending on his mood. Import-export, or I'm expanding my transport business, or simply, I have people handling things. The lies slid out smooth as oil. Nobody questioned him because his family looked comfortable, and comfort in Ogwaluland was assumed to be earned. What nobody knew was that every naira funding that comfort came from a fabric store built by a woman's bare hands. One afternoon, Ngozi returned home aching after a full day negotiating a bulk order with traders from the next town. She found Obinna reclining under the ube tree, 3 friends beside him, an empty bottle rolling near his sandals. One friend spotted him and grinned. "Ah, your husband is a hard-working man. Ah, God has really blessed this family." The others nodded like it was gospel. Ngozi forced a smile and said nothing. She could have told them the truth right there, that Obinna had done absolutely nothing since the previous Tuesday. Instead, she swallowed it because despite everything, some part of her still loved the man he used to be, and she didn't want the village to strip that memory from him in public. That evening, Obinna returned home walking taller than usual. "Did you hear what the men were saying about me today?" Ngozi looked up from the stew. "What did they say?" "They said I carry myself like a man who owns half the market," he said, grinning wide. Ngozi studied his face, waiting for the joke, the wink, some acknowledgement that he knew the truth. It never came. He believed it. Something in her chest cracked quietly, not from the praise itself, but from watching a man mistake his wife's sweat for his own reflection. As the months rolled forward, the imbalance deepened. The more Ngozi expanded her stall, the more idle Obinna became. The more profit she made, the more he spent. New sandals, new radios, generous rounds of drinks for men who laughed behind his back the moment he turned away. Whenever she suggested he try trading again, he had a reason it wouldn't work. Whenever she asked him to help carry goods to market, his back was suddenly troubling him. Yet, in public, he still wore the crown of provider, and the village still let him wear it. Then, one Eke market day, everything shifted. A new trader arrived from Umuahia, setting up 2 stalls down from Ngozi's. Her name was Chioma. She was striking, sharp-tongued in business, and hungry to climb. Within a week, she had heard the stories. Obinna, the transport man, the one with connections in 3 states, the husband who let his wife keep a store just to keep her busy. Chioma was impressed, very impressed. When Obinna first noticed how watching him hold court under the obe tree, he liked it more than he should have. He began finding reasons to pass her store. Innocent conversation first, then small gifts, then gifts that were not small at all. A gold-plated wristwatch, imported wrappers, a phone with a camera better than anything else in the market. All of it paid for with Ngozi's money, moved quietly from a joint savings box she trusted him to manage for emergencies. Chioma believed every word he told her. She believed he owned trucks. She believed he had land outside the city. She believed she had found the rarest kind of man, successful and still humble enough to keep her wife walking. Obinna made no effort to correct her. If anything, he added more trucks to the story each time he told it. Back home, Ngozi remained unaware of the scale of it, though not entirely blind. She had noticed the savings box lighter than it should be. She had noticed new sandals on his feet that she hadn't bought. She filed it away the way busy people file away small wrongs, to be dealt with later, when there was time. But Ogwalo land was a small place, and small places do not keep secrets well for long. One Eke market day, returning from the dye market with cloth balanced on her head, an old woman who sold kola nuts near the stream stopped her. "Ngozi, my daughter." "Yes, Mama." The woman hesitated, glancing left and right before lowering her voice. "There is something happening under that ube tree that you should see with your own eyes." Ngozi's smile faded slowly. Something in the woman's face made her stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" The old woman sighed. "I saw your husband with the new trader, holding hands like 2 young people courting." Ngozi got still. The cloth on her head suddenly felt heavier than any bale she had ever carried. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she forced a small laugh. "There must be a mistake, Mama." But underneath the laugh, a colder, older certainty was already settling in. She did not confront him that night. She returned home, cooked, served, cleaned, and prepared the next day's orders, all while the old woman's words circled her mind like smoke that would not clear. Across the room, Obinna ate cheerfully, chatting about a business deal that would change things soon. He laughed, he lied. Ngozi watched him over the rim of her cup, and for the first time in 11 years of marriage, asked herself whether protecting his reputation had ever once been returned to her as a favor.
The following weeks, she paid closer attention, and piece by piece, the picture completed itself. He left home earlier. He returned smelling of a perfume that wasn't hers. The savings box grew lighter still. One Orie market day, delivering finished garments to a client near the eastern stores, Ngozi saw them together with her own eyes. Obinna and Chioma seated beneath a green umbrella, his hand resting over hers on the table, both of them laughing at something only they understood. Ngozi stopped walking. For a long moment, she simply watched. The betrayal stung, but strangely, what rose in her chest afterward wasn't rage, it was exhaustion. The specific bone-deep exhaustion of someone who has just realized how long she has been carrying a weight that was never truly shared. As she watched, Chioma admired the gold wristwatch now sitting on Obinna's arm, the one Ngozi had bought him 2 Christmases ago from her own profits. The one he was now telling Chioma had come from a business partner in Lagos as a token of loyalty. The lie was so complete it almost made her laugh out loud. The entire relationship, she realized, was built on threads she herself had spun. That evening, she sat outside her store long after closing, watching traders sweep their stands for the night, and asked herself a question she had avoided for 11 years. What exactly does Obinna add to my life? She counted honestly, slowly, the way she counted her weekly earnings, and the total came to nothing. Not one thing that could not be replaced by silence.
The next Eke market day, Ngozi walked deliberately towards Chioma's store. She found them together again, seated closer than before. Several traders noticed and began drifting nearer, sensing the shape of drama before it arrived. Everyone expected shouting, expected cloth torn, expected the sharp, satisfying violence of public shame. Instead, Ngozi walked calmly, her steps unhurried, her face composed. Obinna rose so fast his stool tipped backward. Ngozi? Chioma's confidence cracked visibly. The crowd held its breath. Then, Ngozi smiled, a real smile, not the tight, practiced one she had worn for years. She turned to Chioma, "My sister." Chioma blinked, caught off guard. "Yes?" Ngozi reached out and, to the shock of everyone watching, took her hand gently. "Thank you." The market fell silent enough to hear the wind moving cloth on the racks. Even the men playing draughts nearby stopped mid-move. Chioma stared, certain she had misheard. But Ngozi had already turned, walking away with no tears, no insults, no scene, just the quiet, unhurried gait of a woman setting down something heavy at last. Behind her, Obinna called her name 3 times. She did not turn around because she had finally understood something the whole village would take years to catch up to. Chioma had not stolen her husband. She had inherited her debt. At first, Chioma believed she had won. The whole market buzzed about her for a week. Some admired her boldness, others whispered judgment behind cupped hands, but none of it mattered. In her mind, she had captured the most eligible man in Ogwaluland, a man with trucks, land, and connections, a man whose wife had practically handed him over like a gift too heavy for her to lift.
After Ngozi walked away, Obinna moved his few belongings into the small room Chioma rented behind her store. The first 2 weeks felt like celebration. He lounged, told stories of business deals in progress, described trucks that existed only in conversation. Chioma listened, proud, certain she had chosen well. But after those 2 weeks, small cracks began to show. Every morning she rose before dawn to open her store. Every morning, Obinna remained curled in the wrapper, undisturbed by daylight. When she returned in the evening, he was usually outside, laughing with new friends who seemed to appear from nowhere the moment money started disappearing. At first, she brushed it off. Then one evening, she asked a simple question. "Which truck route are you supervising this week?" Obinna hesitated a bit too long. "My driver is handling the Enugu route this week." Chioma nodded, satisfied enough. A few days later, another question. "When am I meeting your business partners?" "Soon," he said, smiling. But soon never arrived. Weeks folded into a month. The more she watched, the more the picture refused to complete itself. Obinna never left for any depot, never took a single call about cargo, never once produced a receipt, a driver, a partner, a naira that wasn't already hers. Yet he kept spending. New shirts, new shoes, a phone upgrade for networking. One evening, tidying the room, Chioma found a stack of unpaid notices tucked beneath a folded wrapper in the corner. Rent reminders, a debt to the local generator supplier, a warning from the landlord dated 2 weeks prior. Her stomach dropped. That night, she confronted him directly. Obinna. He looked up lazily. Yes? Where exactly is your money coming from? For the first time, his easy charm faltered. What kind of question is that? A simple one, she folded her arms. What do you actually do all day? Silence stretched across the room, thick and answering its own way. And in that silence, Ngozi's words from the market returned to her clear as a bell. Thank you for lifting a weight off my shoulders. At the time, she had assumed the woman was simply bitter, performing grace to save face. Now, she wasn't so sure. The next morning, Chioma went looking for answers the way a good trader does, by asking around. She spoke to 3 women who'd known the family for years. What she learned undid her completely. One elderly trader laughed outright. Obinna, work? That man has never lifted anything heavier than a cup of palm wine. Another woman shook her head slowly. My daughter, you don't know? Know what? The truth arrived in pieces, each one heavier than the last. The store belonged to Ngozi. The savings belonged to Ngozi. The gold watch, the imported wrappers, the phone he now used to network, every single thing traced back to a woman's hands and a woman's discipline. The man Chioma believed she had won had in fact never won anything himself in his life. Her face burned with a humiliation sharper than any market insult. The whole village knew, except her. Suddenly, Ngozi's calm smile at the market made complete sense. It hadn't been grief, it hadn't been jealousy, it was relief. Pure, quiet relief. For the first time, Chioma understood. She had not taken another woman's husband, she had inherited another woman's debt. That evening, she returned to find Obinna exactly where she now expected. Asleep, mid-afternoon, the fan turned toward himself and away from the doorway. Something in her chest finally snapped. Get up. He stirred, groggy. What is it now? She pointed toward the door. I know everything. His face changed instantly. What are you talking about? The store, the money, the trucks that don't exist. Her voice climbed up. None of it was ever yours. He sat up fast. Chioma, let me explain. No! She stepped back, arms trembling. For 2 months, I thought I was building a life with a successful man. Tears of pure fury filled her eyes. But you are not a man standing on your own feet. You are a debt somebody finally stopped paying. The exact word Ngozi had used without saying it outright. A weight. For the first time, Obinna understood he was in real trouble. Because Chioma was no longer looking at him with admiration. She was looking at him the way Ngozi had looked at him in that final moment before walking away. With the flat final calculation of someone closing an account. The next morning, Obinna woke to find his small bag sitting outside the door. He assumed at first it was a joke. Then he saw Chioma standing in the doorway, arms folded, face unreadable. What is this? She didn't blink. You are leaving. He laughed nervously. Stop playing. I'm not playing. His smile collapsed. Chioma, no. She pointed toward the road. You lied to me from the very first conversation. He stepped forward. I can explain everything. Explain what? Her voice cracked upward. Explain how you spent a woman's money and called it your own? He said nothing. Explain how you convinced me you owned trucks you've never even seen? Still nothing. Explain how a grown man expects 2 different women to carry him while he sleeps through both of their lives? The words landed like stones because every one of them was true. By sunset, Obinna stood at the edge of the road with a single bag and nowhere to go. The woman he'd left his wife for had put him out just as quickly as he had arrived. For the first time in his life, he was forced to face what was actually his, which, it turned out, was nothing at all. A week later, pride finally beaten down by hunger, he swallowed what remained of his dignity and went looking for Ngozi. Surely she would take him back. She always had before. But when he reached their old compound, he found strangers in the yard, hanging different washing on the line, a child he didn't recognize playing near the well. Confused, he asked around. What he learned staggered him more than anything Chioma had told him. Ngozi had not simply walked away that day at the market. Within 3 weeks, she had sold her fabric business to a cooperative of women traders who had watched her work for over a decade and trusted her name completely, then left with her children to the capital. She wanted a fresh start, one neighbor told him. Obinna's knees weakened right there in the road. Gone. She was truly gone. For weeks, he searched neighboring towns, asking anyone who might know. Nothing. No message, no trace, no way back. Meanwhile, life turned hard fast. Without Ngozi's money, Obinna discovered he had no trade, no savings, no real skill anyone would pay for. The men who once called him chief now looked past him at the junction. The friends who drank at his expense vanished one by one, the way friends built on free palm wine always do. Soon, he was surviving on whatever scraps the market women pitied him enough to offer, sitting in the same square where he once held court, now asking the very people who used to admire him for coins. Some laughed, others shook their heads and murmured the old saying, "The man who abandons gold chasing brass ends up holding neither." Years passed. One dry afternoon, Obinna sat beneath the old ube tree, older now, his shirt thin and grey, his once confident shoulders curved inward. Nearby, a group of traders discussed news drifting in from the capital. One name rose above the chatter. Ngozi. His heart lurched. The women spoke with open admiration. "She owns 3 shops now," one said. "They say her children are studying abroad," another added. "She built a 2-story house with a gate you can hear from the road," another laughed. God has truly done wonders for that woman. Obinna closed his eyes. And here is where the story turns. For years, he told himself a comfortable lie that Ngozi's success was simply luck, timing, the market finally rewarding a woman who worked long enough. That story let him sleep at night. But hearing 2-story house, a buried memory scratched loose. 2 years before the market day, he'd once opened a locked tin box under the bed out of idle curiosity, expecting savings, maybe wrapper money. Instead, he'd found land documents, a registered business name that wasn't the fabric stalls, and a folded letter from a city cooperative bank addressed to Ngozi alone, discussing a loan for expansion of existing trade operations. At the time, he had assumed it was nothing, some scheme that would fail like everything else around him. He'd closed the box, said nothing, gone back to sleep. The truth landed on him cold as well water. Ngozi had not been blindsided that day at the market. She had already been planning her exit 2 full years before the old kola nut seller ever whispered Chioma's name. The affair hadn't broken her plan. It had simply removed her last reason to delay. Every patient smile, every silent swallow of humiliation under the ube tree had not been a trapped woman unaware of her strength. It was a woman quietly finishing a decade of preparation while letting her husband believe right up to the last day that she needed him at all. The thank you at the market hadn't been a wounded woman's strange grace. It was the closing line of a plan written long before Chioma ever arrived, timed to a public stage so no one could ever claim she left in anger rather than in triumph. He thought of the cousin in the city she visited twice a year. He thought of the evening she asked him, almost gently, "What exactly are you contributing to this house, Obinna?" A question he dismissed as a mood, never suspecting it was a woman testing, one last time, whether there was any reason left to stay. There hadn't been, and she had known it long before he did. That evening, he sat alone as the sun folded behind the hills of Oguland, the truth settling into him heavier than any debt Chioma had ever accused him of carrying. The greatest punishment was not poverty, it was not hunger, it was the understanding that the woman he mistook for a burden bearer, patient and dependent on his shadow, had in fact been the one holding all the real power the entire time, and had simply, calmly chosen the exact moment to stop pretending otherwise in front of the whole village, so he would never be able to tell a version of the story where he came out looking like anything but what he was. Far away, in a city he had never bothered to ask about, Ngozi sat on the balcony of a 2-story house, watching her children study at a long wooden table below. She smiled, not from revenge, and not even from wealth, but from the quiet satisfaction of a woman who had built an exit long before anyone knew she needed one, and who was, for the first time in 11 years, carrying nothing but the weight of her own choices. If this story hit different, you know what to do. Like this video and subscribe for more stories like Ngozi's, and drop a comment telling me the exact moment you knew she was already 3 steps ahead.